Bit of a warning. I am hoping that this sermon will give cause for discussion, primarily not only amongst adults, but you may come to find between adults and their children. So, be aware, be prepared. And if you want, maybe next Sunday or the other Sunday, we'll have a parent and rabbi get together to figure out what to say. All right. A man was once walking along a fairly steep cliff when he got too close. Someone last service suggested that he was trying to take a selfie and he wasn't paying attention, but either way, he fell off the edge. And luckily, on the way down, he grabbed a branch, which temporarily at least stopped his fall. He looked down, and to his horror, he saw that the canyon fell straight down for more than 1,000 feet. Well, he couldn't hang on to the branch forever, and there was no way for him to really climb back up the sheer cliff. So he began yelling for help, hoping that someone passing by would hear him and drop him a rope or something. "Help!" he cried. "Is there anybody up there?" He yelled for a long time, but no one seemed to hear. Yes, just like that. Until finally a voice said, "Stephen, Stephen, can you hear me?" "Yes, I can hear you. I'm down here." "I can see you, Steve. Are you all right?" "Yeah, but who are you? Where are you?" "I'm the Lord, Stephen. I'm everywhere." "The Lord? You mean God?" "Yeah, that's me." "Well, God, please help me. And if you do, I promise I will be a really good person. I'll serve you the rest of my life. I'll stop sinning." "Well, easy on the promises there, Steve. Let's just get you off from there and we can talk about it later. Now, here's what I want you to do. So listen carefully." "Well, I'll do anything, Lord. I'll do anything. You just tell me." "Well, okay then. Let go of the branch." "Come again?" "I said, just let go of the branch. Trust me. Let go." There was a very long silence. "Anyone else up there?" As an individual who represents faith in God, I, more than most people, come face to face with individuals who profess no faith at all. The reasons are many. But if I were to characterize them, they tend to fall within just a few categories. Namely, 1, science and reason are indisputable. Science and reason trump creationism. 2, miracles, by definition, are an abrogation of natural law. Natural law is immutable. Miracles, therefore, cannot be. 3, by definition, God is omniscient, God is omnipotent, and God is omnibenevolent. In other words, God is all-knowing, God is all-powerful, and God is all-good. Given the world's reality, from natural disasters to genocide, God cannot be. 4, God is simply an evolving human construction made to bring light to the fearful corners of the human imagination, impose order under the banner of an assigned morality, and prop up up the hierarchy of whatever particular religion is being addressed. And 5, organized religion has done more to harm humanity than help. Its ritual is removed from spirituality, its teachings are arcane, its leadership is largely hypocritical, and its adherents are largely superstitious and overly simplistic. Well, taken together, it's really a rather daunting indictment. Most times, the reasons for disbelief are presented as an excuse for explaining one's lack of religiosity, which is another way of explaining one's lack of affiliation, which is another way of explaining one's lack of attendance, which is another way of saying, listen, Rabbi, you're a really nice guy and all, but this is really why you never see me. Sometimes I'm pretty sure it's just an excuse, and that the real reason that I don't see them is because they just have other things to do or other priorities to fulfill, which, although it saddens me, is ultimately okay, because to each their own journey. But sometimes I get the sense that what they are offering me represents a really true inner struggle to find their way to faith against a break of waves they just can't seem to get past. And so it is, if you are here, to these individuals in particular, to those of you who have other priorities, and to those of us who are largely just simply superstitious and overly simplistic, that I would offer a few thoughts. First, may I start by admitting that I do not believe in a providential God. If I were to believe in such a God, I would have to believe that, being all-knowing, God is aware of human suffering and of our global race to the bottom. I would likewise have to believe that, being all good, God would not suffer such suffering to perpetuate itself century after century. I would lastly have to believe that, being all-powerful, God could, if God so chose, intervene and put a stop to it without batting an eyelash. Therefore, God is either not all good, or God is either not all-knowing, or God is not all-powerful, and therefore, God is not a providential being that I can believe in. I do believe that every understanding of God is a human construct. But on the other hand, what else could it be but a human construct? What else do we have but our own experiences, emotions, perceptions to describe what is ultimately indescribable? What language are we to communicate such concepts with but with the human tongue? The language of the Bible is our mythology. It provides us the outlines, the reference points by which we communicate concepts, elicit emotions, stir group memory. It is not meant to be literal. But that doesn't mean it's not true. When the Torah recounts how we were redeemed out of Egypt with a mighty arm and an outstretched hand, does anybody believe that a humongous arm came out of the heavens and scooped away the water and cleared us to the other side? Well, no. But the mere evocation of that one line stirs within all of us a common understanding, a sense of something strong and powerful that worked its way through the history of our people at a particular moment of our national distress. It's the same phenomenon as when we rise to say Kaddish. We may not know what the words are, but we, all of us, feel a common sensation. There may be a better way to explain that national experience at the sea, but honestly, a strong arm and an outstretched hand gets to the point so quickly, so poignantly. Now, our ancients make a point to tell us in the Torah, at the same time that they give us this outstretched hand and this mercurial personality for God, that God is ultimately unknowable, that God is beyond human experience except for fleeting glimpses that blind more than they illuminate. Here, if I asked you to describe the people in this room in 3D detail, every square millimeter. Imagine every square millimeter of this room, the people in it. I ask you to describe that, to include in that description the feelings of each individual here and what brings them to that feeling, to include in that description each individual's emotion. Could you do that? Can't even comprehend that. If you were asked to do the same thing for this town, how much more difficult? If we extrapolate and say, can you do that for this planet? How absolutely impossible. The universe. And even if we were somehow able to describe in 3D detail every single square millimeter of this universe separate from another, we would only be beginning our journey to understanding God. Metaphor, it seems then, was an exceptionally wise choice for our ancients to use. And the same applies to miracles. And so here, I do not believe in the burning bush. I do not believe that Noah built an ark. I do not believe that he lived to be 950 years old. I do not believe in the Garden of Eden, the talking serpent, or that Adam and Eve were stupid enough to lie to God straight to God's face. But as metaphors, they impart a treasure of exquisite, lasting truths about human nature, human fallibility, the potential for human triumph. Nothing from the scripture needs to be literally true to be eternally true. Another admission. I do not believe in the infallibility of organized religion. Organized religion has done incalculable harm and inflicted generational misery upon humanity. In the form of fundamentalism, it is doctrinally closed off to reason, advancement, human empathy. Its ritual is removed from universal spirituality. Its teachings are arcane. Its leadership is largely hypocritical, and its adherents are largely superstitious and overly simplistic and prone to tribalism. But that doesn't mean that all forms of organized religion are bad. Organized religion has also brought us ethical morality. Organized religion has seen the Jewish people through 2,000 years of the most horrid persecution. It has freed the continent of India from colonial rule. It has set the American black community on the road to civil liberty. It has brought life-saving relief to millions suffering from hunger and disease and poverty. It has lifted the fallen and healed the sick and provided respite for the weary. It has championed the marginalized, and it has sought to evolve in keeping with the times, in forging bonds of faith united, and in demanding that its adherents, and the world focus on the critical issues at hand. Religion itself is not the problem. It's people allowing religion to be less than it is supposed to be that's the problem. And that's not a problem solved by walking away, but by joining and lifting it in faith. Lastly, I do not believe the world was created in 7 days, 5,779 years ago to this day. I don't believe that God made a list, wrote it out by means of the Torah, and went about constructing the universe, stopping at Home Depot along the way. And yet, I do not believe that the Scripture's account runs contrary to science. Numbers in the Torah are generally meaningless in and of themselves. They are meant to indicate that someone led a very long life, that something took a very long time, or the import of something is relative numerically to something else. Numbers themselves are metaphorical. The world was not created in 7 days, not 24-hour days. But the world, as our ancients understood it, did evolve in distinctly different eras, lasting perhaps hundreds of millions of years. What the Torah tries to explain is that it wasn't all the result of some cosmic, chaotic accident, but an orderly progression, one event or period leading to another event or period, and all of it inevitably stemming from the nature of God being God. So let us imagine that God is not a personified entity. No thought, no will, no emotions that we normally associate with God, because that's the only way we know how to describe God. Let's assume that God is all there is, an all-encompassing oneness. Part of the nature of this oneness is expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction. At one point, the oneness in a millisecond expands, contracts, expands again. And with that second expansion, it sends energy sailing in all directions, even through to this current day. In the first seconds of that second expansion, subatomic particles within the energy surge begin to coalesce. And the further on the expansion goes, the more they coalesce, forming what we know as matter. And in that tohu vavohu of the first few moments, the matter, through brand new laws of relativity and gravity, begin to form planets, stars, galaxies. The universe begins to take shape. All of it of God, all of it because of God's nature. In our own little corner of the Milky Way, the Earth too begins its evolution, first with a violent tectonic division of waters and land, then with beginnings of life in the seas, then with life developing and moving from the seas to fly in the air and crawl on the land, and then to walk on the land, and then, at last, the appearance of humankind. In other words, the Bible's description of creation isn't anti-science. It simply uses a different lexicon to describe exactly the very same process. Which is pretty incredible, because our ancients didn't have any access to any of the tools that we use today. And so if you were to ask me, well, after all of that, do you believe in God? My answer would be, this is when they switch to commercials on all those reality TV shows. My answer would be an unequivocal yes. Perhaps not how most of humanity has been taught to believe in God, but yes, I believe all the same. Absolutely. And I am obviously not the first or alone in my non-orthodoxy, because great rabbis throughout our history, theologians and philosophers, have proffered teachings and insights, some that would blow your minds, about the reality of God. I don't need to believe that I am directly addressing a personified God in heaven every time I ascend this pulpit to believe that I invoke the power of common memory, shared desires, historical longings, contemporary needs, rallying our shared energies and lifting us in joined purpose. The words of our prayers, as contained in our prayer books, are but vehicles to move and inspire the spinning energy of our souls and direct it as it is most fit. And that has efficacy. Having faith does not require a belief in a providential God who knows us by name. Having faith does not require a belief in a post-mortem punishment or reward. Having faith does not require the suspension of disbelief. It doesn't even require believing in a higher power. What faith does require is trusting that despite our imperfections, things work out when we want them to. It means accepting that with or without us, life goes on. Having faith means accepting that there is more to life and more to existence than what the feeble human mind can grasp, and the limited scope of the human array of senses can perceive. Having faith means believing that despite all of the historical pressure to the contrary, right is better than wrong. Liberty is better than tyranny. Morality is better than depravity. Compromise is better than obstruction. And the price of the many is better than the cost of the one. Indeed, being a person of faith means extending the benefit of the doubt, ever hopeful for a better outcome. Being a person of faith means believing in natural law as validated through science. Being a person of faith means refusing to abdicate the responsibility of reason for the shelter of ignorance. Being a person of faith means valuing the intangible above all else and at all times. What is faith? Faith is to live simply, to love generously, to care ever so deeply, to take the time to speak ever so kindly. Let us be a bit more faithful this year. Shana Tova.